There is a racetrack in Alabama called Talladega. It is one of the biggest, fastest, most terrifying ovals in all of American motorsport. And in 1969, Ford built a car specifically to conquer it. They even gave that car the racetrack's own name. It was sleek, it was brutal, it was one of the most aerodynamic machines Detroit had ever produced, and it was born for one purpose: to dominate. But here is the cruel twist that almost nobody remembers. When that brand new Superspeedway finally opened its gates, the Ford that carried its name did not win the first race there. It lost. And within just a few short years, this NASCAR-bred warrior would be stripped of its power, bloated into a soft luxury cruiser, and quietly killed off. Remembered today, not as a champion, but as a prop in an old television show. This is the story of how the Ford Torino died. To feel the fall, you first have to understand how high this car once flew. The Torino arrived in 1968 as Ford's stylish new midsize car, named after the Italian city of Turin, sometimes called the Detroit of Italy. Interestingly, that name had actually been on the list of possible names for the Mustang years earlier. At first, the Torino was just a handsome, upscale family car. But Ford had bigger plans. They noticed that the smooth, sloping, fastback roofline of the Torino, which they called the sports roof, was fantastic at cutting through the air at high speed. And in the world of 1960s NASCAR, where stock cars really were based on the cars you could buy, that slippery shape was a weapon. Then Ford dropped a monster into it. They stuffed in the 428 Cobra jet, a big, torque-rich V8 that turned this everyday family car into a genuine street sweeper. They created the Torino Cobra, a budget muscle car built to go toe-to-toe with the Plymouth Roadrunner. The Torino had officially become a muscle car, but its greatest moment was still ahead. Because in 1969, Ford built something truly special, the Torino Talladega. This was not just a trim package or a set of stripes. This was a purpose-built weapon, created for one reason only: to win on the superspeedways. The engineers went to work on the aerodynamics with almost obsessive detail. They took the front end and extended the nose by around 5 to 6 inches, sculpting it into a smooth, tapered point that sliced through the wind. And they did it all in steel, hand-cut and re-welded, not with cheap bolt-on plastic. They took the grille, which normally sat recessed and trapped air like a scoop, and mounted it flush with the body, even sealing it with a rubber gasket for a cleaner airflow. And then came the sneakiest trick of all. They rolled the rocker panels along the bottom of the car, which quietly allowed the race teams to sit the car a full inch lower to the ground, all while technically staying within NASCAR's rules. That extended nose alone was estimated to add around 5 miles per hour of top speed, the kind of gain you would normally need 75 extra horsepower to find. Ford only had to build 500 of these cars for the public to make it legal for racing. They ended up building around 750. These were true showroom race cars, hand-built by Ford's famous racing partners, and they were almost comically no-frills. You could have your Talladega in any color you liked, as long as it was one of just 3: Wimbledon white, royal maroon, or presidential blue. There was essentially one option available: an AM radio. Everything else was built for the track. And the wildest part? On paper, that street 428 Cobra jet was rated modestly, yet many experts believe it was underrated by well over 100 horsepower, a common trick of the era. Even better, this homologation special weapon actually cost about the same as a regular Mustang on the showroom floor, making it one of the great bargains in muscle car history. Mercury even built its own nearly identical twin, called the Cyclone Spoiler. And out on the track, the Talladega did exactly what it was born to do. It was an absolute monster. In the 1969 and 1970 seasons, the Talladega roared to 29 victories in NASCAR's Top Series, and it handed Ford the manufacturer's championship for 1969. Legends like Richard Petty and David Pearson piled up win after win behind the wheel. This was the golden age of win on Sunday, sell on Monday, and the Talladega was winning. Ford was on top of the mountain. And then, everything began to unravel. The first crack appeared on the very racetrack the car was named after. When the brand new Talladega Superspeedway held its first ever big race in September of 1969, it was not a Ford that took the checkered flag. It was a Dodge, the wild, wing-tailed Charger Daytona, that won the opening race at Ford's namesake track. It was a stinging, symbolic blow, and Chrysler was not done. The next year, Plymouth rolled out the outrageous Superbird with its towering rear wing and lured the great Richard Petty away from Ford and back into a Mopar. The competition Ford had once dominated was now slipping through its fingers. Ford did have an answer ready. It was called the Torino King Cobra, an even more extreme aero car with a long, drooping snout designed to fight the Mopar wing cars head-on. But it was never to be. Two things killed it. First, a new man had taken charge at Ford, Lee Iacocca, and he saw racing as an expensive distraction. In his mind, Ford would sell plenty of Torinos whether they won on Sunday or not. Second, NASCAR suddenly changed the rules, raising the number of cars a company had to build for the public from 500 all the way up to 3,000. That turned an already costly project into a financial nightmare. So Ford pulled the plug. Only 3 King Cobra prototypes were ever built. They never raced. They never reached a single showroom. Today, those 3 orphan cars are worth around $500,000 each, silent ghosts of a war Ford decided to stop fighting. And that was the real beginning of the end. After being grilled in congressional hearings about how much money was being poured into racing instead of into fuel economy and safety, Ford made a sweeping decision. It walked away from racing almost entirely, starting with the 1970 season. The factory support vanished, and then NASCAR delivered the final blow to the whole breed. After the 1970 season, the sanctioning body effectively outlawed the Aero cars, forcing these sleek, specially built machines to run with far smaller engines that made them uncompetitive. Just like that, the entire era of the Aero Warrior was over, and the Talladega's reason for existing was gone. To put the scale of Ford's retreat into perspective, after the glory of 1969, Ford would not win another NASCAR Drivers' Championship for nearly 2 decades. By the time it finally happened again, the sport had changed so completely that the winning car had almost nothing to do with anything sitting in a Ford showroom. The Torino's moment in the sun had come and gone in a flash. With the racing dream dead, the Torino lost its way completely. The car got bigger. It got heavier. As the 1970s rolled on, tightening emissions laws and fuel worries slowly strangled the engines, draining away the very power that had made the Torino special. By 1972, the transformation was almost complete. The Torino was reborn as a heavy, soft, body-on-frame cruiser, and Ford deliberately steered away from performance and toward comfort and luxury. The Cobra, that proud muscle car name, was quietly discontinued. Then came the government-mandated safety bumpers, big and bulky, that ruined the clean, aggressive lines. The sleek fastback body was dropped. The mighty 429 engine was eventually swapped out for an even larger but softer motor that only came paired with an automatic, built for smooth cruising rather than stoplight wars. Year by year, the last remaining performance options were stripped away until the once fearsome Torino was little more than a big, plush, wallowing personal luxury coupe, a world away from the Aero Warrior that had terrorized Talladega. And here is the final, bittersweet irony of all. That soft, heavy, later Torino is actually the version most people remember today, but not for anything it did on a racetrack. A bright red 1970s Gran Torino, wearing a big white stripe, became a television star as the car in a famous cop show, earning the nickname the Striped Tomato. Decades later, another Torino took center stage in a Clint Eastwood film that carried the car's name as its title. So the world does remember the Torino. It just remembers it as a movie and television prop, a symbol of blue-collar toughness, rather than the record-setting, championship-winning Aero machine it had been at its peak. By 1976, the Torino name had run out of road, and Ford quietly retired it, replacing it with a forgettable, anonymous badge. The car built to conquer the fastest track in America ended its life as a comfortable cruiser with a movie career. That is the story of the Ford Torino. A car that was engineered into a wind-cheating superspeedway champion that won a title and dozens of races, and then watched its own racetrack crown it a loser on opening day. A car whose ultimate weapon, the King Cobra, was killed before it ever turned a wheel. A car strangled by regulations, abandoned by its own maker, and slowly softened into something unrecognizable before fading away entirely. Those rare, surviving Talladegas and the 3 lonely King Cobras are treasures now, worth a fortune, quiet reminders of what this car truly was before the world moved on. So tell me down in the comments, did you know the Torino was ever a NASCAR killer? But did you only know it from a screen? And which forgotten muscle legend would you bring roaring back to life? I would love to hear it. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next story.